Press.
I want to recognize and welcome all members here at M46 and on the virtual platform. I want to welcome the public protector at M46 and their legal team, both here and on the virtual with the Advocate Mbofu. Welcome members of the media here and on the virtual, and as well as other streams. Welcome all our watchers, those who what we do is on their behalf, the members of the public, 408 and YouTube streaming. Thank you very much. We are now going to start our proceedings with a new witness. And I am going to invite Fatima Ibrahim on the virtual platform to do the preliminaries and introduce the witness. Ms. Ibrahim.
Good morning, Chairperson. Chair, the witness for today is Ms. Basani Baloyi. Ms. Baloyi, can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you.
Ma'am, can I please ask that you switch on your camera while we do the oath? Thank you. Ms. Baloyi, you have been invited, subject to the provisions of Section 16 of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act of 2004, to appear before this committee as a witness and to answer questions in respect of the committee's inquiry into the removal of the Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane. Please be informed that by law you are required to answer fully and satisfactorily all the questions lawfully put to you, or to produce any documents that you are required to produce in connection with the subject matter of the inquiry, notwithstanding the fact that the answer or the documents could incriminate you or expose you to criminal or civil proceedings or damages. You are, however, protected in that evidence given under oath or affirmation before a house or committee may not be used against you in any court or place outside of Parliament, except in criminal proceedings concerning a charge of perjury or a charge relating to the evidence or documents required in these proceedings. Please be aware further that in terms of Section 17(2) of the Powers Act, a person who willfully furnishes a house or committee with information or makes a statement before it which is false or misleading commits an offence and is liable to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years. Ms. Baloyi will now be required to take an oath or to affirm that the evidence you are about to give is truthful. Which do you prefer, the oath or affirmation?
The oath.
May I ask that you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I swear that the evidence I shall give.
I swear that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Chair, the witness is now duly sworn in. Thank you, Ms. Baloyi.
Thank you, Ms. Fatima Ibrahim, and thank you and welcome to Ms. Basani Baloyi. Before I proceed to the evidence leaders, I see a hand. Advocate Mbofu.
Yes, good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, everyone. Yes, Chair. Yes, we have an objection to raise. It's the usual objection, and we accept, as I said earlier, we expect the usual reaction, but as you know, we have to do what we have to do. Yeah. Chair, we have raised this before, but for the record, we just want to reiterate that our objection and seek a ruling from you on the relevance of the evidence of this witness. It's upon the usual grounds that we have raised before of no relation to the issues that are before you, or that should be before you. But it cuts two issues, and I'll outline them just now, Chair, before you give us your ruling. The first one is that, as I said, that the evidence lacks relevance to the motion of Ms. Mazone, the former Chief Whip of the TA, and that there are legal and practical grounds why it should not be admitted, but I'll come to that now. Let me just lay the basis first. You would recall that on the first day of these proceedings, we referred the committee to the report of the independent panel. And if the operator can assist us by taking us to page 87 of the independent panel report. Thank you. Yeah, actually, that's fine. We start there at page 83. Yeah. Right. You'll recall, Chair, that that's the section in the independent panel report that deals with...
you mean you are referring to paragraph 187?
I'm starting at 186.
Oh, okay.
1X.
Go ahead.
Roman 9, which is 1X, is the section in the independent panel report that deals with Ms. Baloyi's evidence, you will recall. And as I said, because I've taken you here before, I'm not going to read the chapter and verse, but I'll just zoom onto the relevant parts. Can you roll it down slowly? Yeah, so that part deals with the case in the High Court. Yeah, just keep on rolling. I'll tell you when to stop. And then which was taken to the Constitutional Court, the case that Ms. Baloyi lost in the High Court, and then it was taken to the High Court, rather to the Court on the issue of jurisdiction. That finding was reversed, and so the case had to go back to the High Court for the merits. Carry on. And it then tells about the reasons, the grounds that are raised in the case about probation, which you would have seen in the statement. Carry on. And then it deals with some of the allegations made by Ms. Baloyi in the affidavit before you, and the ones in court that she refers to in her affidavit. Carry on. Then it deals with, carry on, yeah. 194, it deals with the specific examples that the Mkhwebane'S investigation. Next one. And then to the extent that she deals, go back a bit, yeah. Then she deals with the CR17, Sassa, and Rogue Unit investigation. Then she deals with McBride and then Ppsa. Right. Carry on. Yeah. Carry on a bit. Yeah. Then, okay, now you can pause there. Yeah. Now, this is the relevant part towards the end of the report, which I will read out. It says, the bulk of the allegations, again, concern Mahlangu and not the PP. This is certainly the case in respect of the Mkhwebane'S and Ppsa investigations. That's 195. 196. We do not believe that the allegation that the PP should have investigated the NDZ campaign after the interview with Watson has merit. The circumstances were different. No complaint was received about Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma representing to the National Assembly the position regarding donations to her personnel or her campaign, in contrast to the president. And then furthermore, the allegations that the reports did not follow the quote normal process or that they were rushed, quote unquote, also seem as too vague and generalized in nature to sustain a prima facie case for either incompetence or misconduct. Next paragraph. In the circumstances, we find that the Baloyi matter does not raise prima facie. In the circumstances, we find that the Baloyi matter does not raise prima facie evidence of incompetence or misconduct. Next point. We point out further that the PP in the case of Baloyi dealt with these allegations in a lengthy and detailed answering affidavit. All the allegations made against the PP are heavily disputed. Okay, so that was the conclusion of the independent panel regarding the matters that are now going to be canvassed before this committee. And the sum total of what the independent panel report found was that none of these allegations are relevant to the charges before you of incompetence or misconduct. Now, the reasons for the objections are basically threefold. The first one is that is a legal objection about relevance, which I've already articulated. The second one is a practical one, or let's call it a financial one, which is just a waste of taxpayers' money. We're still waiting as to what the daily cost of this exercise is. But the last time we were hovering around either 500,000 or 1 million or whatever. But as we said, it doesn't matter what it is. It's all we know is that it costs a lot of money. And therefore, it should not just be, abused or used for purposes that have nothing to do with the business of the committee. And then thirdly, the entertaining these kinds of witnesses is just costing time. It costs money, of course, but it also costs time and basically prolongs the absence of the public protector behind her desk, which then is to the detriment of the public that she is intended to protect. So, as we say, it's bad in law, it's bad in financial terms, and it's also bad for the public. And I might add that it's also bad for anybody else who will face impeachment, including your favorites, because you are putting, you're setting precedents of rules which say that the work of an independent panel can be cast aside.
I just missed that part. Did you say my favorites? I missed that part. Did I get you correct?
Yeah, not you. No, not you personally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it might also be, as they say, if the shoe fits. But no, it's not.
I didn't get that.
No, I'm saying it might also be, but it was not directed at you personally. But if you feel that it does, I won't stand in your way. Yeah. I was saying that
Advocate Mbofu, I think I'm patiently following you, but I think it's important that you refrain on that. This committee has no favorites.
Okay, fine.
Please.
Let me
Including
rephrase.
Mr. Chairperson.
Yes.
Please.
I
Thank
know.
you.
Yeah, no, let me rephrase. I'm saying that when we started, I'll put it differently, maybe in more neutral terms, Chair. When we started, we all agreed that this was an unprecedented process which is creating, hopefully, a platform for future processes of this nature. All I'm saying is that one of the basis for this objection is the fact that if we, and I'm even including myself here, if we create precedents here that say that the work of an independent panel, in other words, even if an independent panel exonerates a person on particular charges, that must just be cast aside. It's something that we might regret in the future. That's maybe, let me put it that way. Yeah. So without specifying in which particular sense that is, I'm just saying that we just need to be careful as to what kind of precedent we create here, because the law works that way. You know, today it might be someone we hate, but tomorrow it might be someone we like. Thank you. Those are the 4 grounds, then, Chair, that we advance for the objection. And as it is customary, I'm sure we'll get your ruling and then we move on. Or unless if you want to convene the committee.
Thank you.
Like you did last time.
Thank you, Advocate Mpofu. Mkhwebane'S, there's nothing customary here.
Well, I agree, Chair. Last time there was an objection on relevance. You actually had a break and convened the committee. So I don't know which custom you'll follow, that one or the other one.
No, thank you, Advocate Mpofu. I think I just need to, as a quick response, to firstly appreciate you on your consistency. You are correct. The very first day, this is a matter you would have placed on record in this inquiry, amongst other things. And I think you did that with absolute clarity in terms of how you felt about especially this particular issue relating to this witness. So that would have been recorded on the very first day, and you would have done so to try also to persuade us in terms of the directives, because it was in relation to what our directives were also at that point pointing to. So I want to, in that regard, it's not just one and same things like others. I think even the members of the public would have listened to you when you place this matter. You would be aware that at that point we made a ruling, and that ruling would have been factored in also in terms of the directives, where we would have said we would go ahead and listen beyond what the panel would have placed in front of us as a way to assist ourselves as a committee. And it might not just be confined to this matter of Ms. Basani Baloyi. There could be others, even from your side, for that matter. And I'm not saying that plan that and bring it, but when that comes forward, we would have to have an open mind about it, because you would do as we are doing, with an attempt to really place in front of this committee matters that, as we think that they could be of help in our deliberations and findings. I take note of the clearly defined objections to this in the form you have placed them, the legal, financial, and so on. as I said, on the financial, I don't want us to go there because it did not originate with you. It originated with a member as a throwaway. So I would not blame you for reminding us about that. And I hope at some point that matter will be clarified around the issues of finances. But as I would have indicated in the previous ruling, that as you have assisted me, we are in a very unprecedented, to use your word, uncharted process, which in our view is a priceless process that we really want to, because it's about enhancing and deepening democracy. I take a particular, I share the issue raising about issues of time, because this process must be done within a reasonable period, and so I think I get those, and having listened to all of that, and however, I think it's important that we, for both members of the public, for this committee and everybody else, that we place the evidence. We listen to it and engage with it, and we are going to, when we make our own deliberations, conclude and pronounce whether we would have wasted our time on these issues or resources. So in that regard, Advocate Mpofu, I will disappoint you
Very well.
and say, no, you don't know what I'm going to say.
I know. I have an idea.
So I will disappoint you and make a ruling that we proceed with the witness, having listened to what you said and really digesting the issues that you have raised, because it's not for the first time. It's not a knee-jerk thing that you are putting forward. You have started with it. I want to respect that, and that's the consistency that I am referring to. So I hope we are at one, even if we don't agree on that. Thank you. You did say that you're doing your work, and I appreciate that. You have to do what you have to do.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair. Yes, no, thank you, Chair. I will note it then, the ruling. Just for what it's worth, I just want to say that yes, you are quite right. And as I said, that the matter was raised, but it was raised in a slightly different context, if you remember, on day one. It was just an example of why the committee should look at the narrow, what we called then the narrow focus, as opposed to the wide focus.
Yes.
It's now being raised in a different context of the relevance of this particular witness. But I take your point that your remarks sort of cover both grounds. And the last thing is just that, I know it might be that, as you say, the thing is going to help, the evidence is going to help here. But just to remind you that the standard you should follow is not help, it's relevance. But you've already made your claim. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your assistance there. Let's proceed. Thank you, Advocate Mpofu. I now recognize the evidence leader, Advocate Bauer.
Good morning, Chair. The evidence today will be dealt with by Ms. Mayosi.
Thank you very much, Advocate Bauer. Advocate Ms. Mayosi, I hand over to you. And I'm hoping that as you start now, almost 30 minutes later, we'll take you up to lunch and assess there. Thank you.
Let's be hopeful, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Basani, Baloyi, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Advocate.
Hello. So you are presently employed as a Deputy General in the Gauteng Department of Health, correct?
Correct.
Just to help, Deputy General, what?
Deputy Director General.
Thank you.
I was worried.
I was also worried.
Sorry, Chair, for these titles.
And she is also confirming just Deputy
Yes,
General.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
correction. Deputy DG, yes, yes. But you were employed in the Office of the Public Protector as the Chief Operations Officer, correct?
Correct.
And you were employed in that capacity from the 1st of February 2019 until the 31st of October 2019. Is that right?
Correct.
So you were employed on a fixed term 5-year contract as the COO, correct?
Correct.
And what were your functions as a COO?
I was coordinating investigation and also being a program manager, for the branch responsible for it.
So who did you report to?
On investigations, I reported directly to the public protector, and administration, I reported to Mr. Busisiwe. And for the cases older than 2 years, I reported to the DPP then.
So the CEO at the time was Mr. Busisiwe, and the DPP at the time was, who was the DPP at the time? Was it Advocate Kevin Malunga?
Correct.
All right. So you've explained who you reported to, but who reported to you?
I had 4 executive managers that reported to me. That was Ms. Bona Mukhaladi, Ms. Nelly Tenjani, Ms. Ntoriseng Mutsitsi, and Advocate Stoffel.
Right. So you made an affidavit for this inquiry with the assistance of the evidence leaders in order to assist this inquiry, correct?
Correct.
And that's the affidavit that's actually up on the screen now. And you say in paragraph 3 of that affidavit that you make this affidavit to place before this inquiry the reasons why you believe that you were purged from the PPSA by the PP and her former CEO, Mr. Busisiwe. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Baloyi, these are serious allegations. That's a serious allegation or claim to make. Do you stand by that claim?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't get that. That went very quiet. Can you repeat that? Okay, just get closer to the mic so that I don't think that in others you want to go soft and others quite clearer. Thank you. Proceed, Advocate Mayosi.
So your answer was yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So when you joined the PPSA as the COO in February, you joined on a fixed 5-year contract, right? Ms. Baloyi?
Yes.
You joined on a fixed 5-year term contract, is that right?
Yes, correct.
And that would have been starting from February 2019 until 2024, correct?
Correct.
LDB1 Bundle A, page 2196.
Got it? Just go down. So the fixed term contract of employment that is up there on the screen, is that the contract that you signed? Go up, Tsepo.
Correct.
Is that the contract that you signed?
Correct.
216. And you were on probation, you say, for a period of, you say in paragraph 4 of your affidavit that your contract had a probationary period of 6 months. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. So having started on the 1st of February, 2019, your 6 months probationary period ended on the 31st of July, 2019, right?
Yes.
Can I take you to paragraph 5 of your contract? Go back to the contract, Tsepo, go to page 2200. Yeah? Yeah. So that's the contract, and that's the provision that deals with your probation, correct?
Correct.
So make it bigger, Tsepo. Sorry. Thank you. It says in paragraph 5.1, you will be on a 6 months probationary period commencing from the date of your appointment, and your probation may be extended for a period of not more than 12 months. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then it says that during this probationary period, your conduct and work performance will be regularly appraised in order to determine your suitability for the post, right?
Correct.
So you testified earlier just now that you reported to the PP for investigations. You reported to the CEO on administrative matters, and you said that you reported to the DPP in relation to cases older than 2 years. My question to you with reference to paragraph 5.1 of your contract is, was your conduct and work performance appraised at all during your probationary period to determine your suitability for the post?
No.
By either the DPP, the PP, or the CEO?
No.
As the CEO, you attended dashboard meetings. Is that right?
Correct.
Was your performance and conduct not appraised during dashboard meetings?
The purpose of dashboard meetings were not meant to assess my performance.
What was the purpose of dashboard meetings?
The dashboard meetings were meant to deal with, the progress, on cases that we're dealing with. And we had a project plan on those particular cases. So it was a meeting that was attended by other executives. So it was not meant for assessing my performance.
Staying with your contract, go back to the contract. Let's go to paragraph 5.4 of the contract. Just go down. Yeah. Yeah. So still dealing with the probationary period, it says that the employer shall provide all reasonable guidance and assistance to the employee to enable the employee to complete the probationary period successfully. Do you see that?
Yes.
were you given any guidance and assistance during your probationary period to enable you to complete your probationary period successfully?
No.
And when you say no, what do you mean? What form was this guidance and assistance supposed to take? And why do you say it was not there?
When you deal with the performance of an individual, you know, firstly, I had a performance agreement that I was supposed to be assessed on. And this is a process that is also regulated, that, you know, I needed to have dates when I'm going to assess, which has never happened. I needed to have meetings, which I can tell you that I don't even have minutes of that. It could have been documents that I used to assess the performance, and also acknowledgement that indeed this meeting happened, this was discussed, and this is what we agreed upon. There was never such a process. So that's what I'm saying, that it never happened. And most of the time when we're talking about the dashboard meetings, this is a meeting that, you know, was attended by other, you know, people that were reporting to me. So it was not meant to assess my performance. As I said, that if the performance that I was supposed to be assessed on should have been obviously, you know, based on my performance agreement and other commitments that I've made. And to that effect, they should be proved that, you know, indeed this process was undertaken by the employer.
All right, just staying with your employment contract again, go to paragraph 5.5, Ppsa. Thank you. It says there that the employee's appointment shall be confirmed at the end of the probationary period once the employer is satisfied with the employee's level of performance. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you've already testified that your probationary period ended on the 31st of July, 2019. So at the end of your period then, what happened?
At the end of the period, nothing happened.
All right. Can we go to LBB 15, page 2338, Tsepo. 2338. You got it? Yeah. So on the 8th of October, 2019, you received that letter, right?
Yes.
Go down to the end of the letter so we can check the date and the sender. Yeah? And that letter was from Mr. Busisiwe on the 8th of October, correct?
Correct.
Go back up. I want to read paragraph 2, Sepa, of the letter. And so the letter, let's go back, yeah. So the letter says in the title that it's an invitation for you to make representations on confirmation of permanent employment. And it says in paragraph 2 that it's an invitation for you to make those representations on why your permanent employment with the Ppsa should be confirmed. Do you see that?
Yes.
And in paragraph 4 of the letter, Mr. Mahlangu says one-on-one meetings were scheduled between you and the PP on a weekly basis. These meetings were aimed at improving performance, and during these meetings, as well as impromptu meetings with him, the Ppsa highlighted various performance deficiencies. Did these meetings occur? What do you say to that?
This is a statement made, and, you know, with due respect, this is not true. It's a lie. Because of, I never had weekly meetings to discuss my performance, or neither was I alerted that, you know, there are deficiencies. And for such an office, with the position that I occupied and the level of my supervisors, surely there should have been documents. This process could have been documented quite well. So if he says that there were meetings weekly, I'm not aware of those meetings. Surely they could have been in my diary and the PP's diary, and there should be record for such performances. And also the performance deficiencies that were mentioned there, I'm not aware of them.
And then he says in paragraph 5 that you will also recall that the Ppsa invited you to make representations on why it should not take disciplinary action against you on a number of performance-related matters. In this regard, I refer to the various Audi and reprimand letters which were issued to you during this period. And then he said he enclosed the copies thereof for your ease of reference. And in light of the seriousness of these issues raised in the letters, and having considered your representations there to the Ppsa, finds it difficult to confirm your permanent employment. Do you have any comment to make to this?
Yes. You know, the issue of Audi was a norm. You know, you'll get, I've got even Audis that are not even related to performance. I'll cite one of those as an issue of Miss Musana. You know, it was not related to performance. And when, you know, when the paragraph that reads on, I mean, the statement that reads that, you know, on the number of performance-related matters, for me, this could not make sense. And when I approached Mr. Mahlangu himself, he says to me, unfortunately, I had to do this. And I also even raised it with Mr. Gumbi to say that, you know, given my background and the fact that my trade is in human resources, you cannot make such a statement without, you know, validating them. And I really do not understand. But Mr. Mahlangu's response was, unfortunately, I have to do it. But I contended to the fact that, you know, you cannot just give me a letter with serious allegations, which is not validated by facts. And I think, to me, if it's an instruction from the PP, it's actually an unlawful instruction, because of you are making allegations which you are writing as, you know, a supervisor on matters that you don't even know and understand yourself.
So Mr. Mahlangu, then his letter contained other allegations about your overall job performance. Go down, Seppa. And the issues, and he raised various issues about you and how you had conducted yourself as a COO, and ultimately at the end of the letter, he invited you to make written representations by no later than 2 days later, the 10th of October, as to why your position should be, your contract should be confirmed. Is that right?
Yes.
So you responded on the same day, 2341. Next page. You responded on the same day to him, right? And you requested an extension to respond to his letter. The extension you requested for was to the 22nd of October, correct?
Correct.
And on the next page, support 2342, Mr. Mahlangu responded to you and he granted you an extension. But he did say in paragraph 3 of his letter that he thought the extension that you were asking for was a little bit excessive, and he was going to grant you an extension until the 15th of October, rather, correct?
Correct.
And then you duly responded on the 15th of October 2019. Next page, 2344, Tsepo. Yes. Is that your response?
Correct.
So, yeah. So in your response then, you began to deal with the allegations that had been made by Mr. Mahlangu in his letter, starting in paragraph 3, where you disputed that the purpose of the Monday weekly meetings convened by the PP and attended by you was for the purposes of assessing your performance. Is that right?
Yes, I still dispute that. No, the meetings were not to assess my performance.
And then in paragraph 4 of your response, you pointed out there that you hadn't had scheduled meetings, nor had you received any feedback about your performance and conduct, and no concerns had been raised in that regard. Is that correct?
It's correct.
So in the last paragraph, in the last sentence of the paragraph, you say something about your performance agreement, that you initiated the development of it. Can you just elaborate for the committee what that was about?
That statement, advocate, was meant to indicate that you are said to be assessed by something that even the person that aims to assess you does not even understand or does not know, for the mere fact that we never even discussed my deliverables. But I initiated, a performance agreement which I submitted to him, and he approved as is, no amendments or comma or a full stop. So I had, that document which clearly stipulated what is expected of him and myself. And he signed that, performance agreement without even discussing it with me, because I gave him the document to review and engage as in a normal environment, and given the extent of work that I had to do. But instead, we never discussed that performance agreement. He just signed it, and it was sent, the copy was sent to me and to HR for filing. So I was trying to show him that even if feedback, what would the feedback be based on? Because me and him never agreed even on standards. And the things that are in my performance agreement clearly stipulated our expectations, which at that time and on that day, I felt that he's not even living to what he has signed for.
And then in paragraph 6 of your response, you then dispute Mr. Mahlangu's assertions about your defective interpersonal relations and some of the other allegations he made in paragraphs 8 and 9 of his letter to you, correct?
Correct, yes.
And you set out in detail in paragraph 6 the basis upon which you dispute this. You set out your performance. You set out the efforts you made in dealing with the backlog project, which was a priority for the PP and the organization. Is that right?
Correct.
And then you continue basically in that vein in the rest of your letter, disputing his assertions and stating your assertion that there was no basis upon which your contract should not be confirmed. Is that right?
Correct.
And then you received a response from Mr. Mahlangu, LBB 19, support 2350. You've got it? LBB 19. Yeah? On the 21st of October, which was titled Non-Confirmation of Permanent Employment. Correct?
Correct.
And in paragraph 3 of that response, he says, after careful consideration and an objective assessment of your performance, the PPSA is of the view that you are not suitable for the role of COO, taking into account your overall capability, skills, performance, and general conduct in relation to the position. He continues in paragraph 4 to say that it's with regret to have to tell you that the PPSA is unable to confirm your appointment. And in paragraph 5, he says your official last working day will be the end of October. However, you are recused from presenting yourself for active duty and from performing your ordinary responsibilities and functions as COO as from the date of that letter. So with immediate effect, you're recused from having to come to work until the termination date. Is that right?
Correct.
And then what happened after that? Can you just tell the committee what transpired after that, after your receipt of this letter?
When Mr. Mahlangu gave me this letter, I was with Mr. Gumbi, who was heading HR, and I actually raised with him that what you are doing, it's actually illegal, and that you have not complied with your own policies. You are not even complying with the law. And he said to me, anyway, take this letter and leave my office because I will also leave this institution, I know. So I said to him, why should I leave the building? Because I'm not a threat. This is an issue of performance. And you and I know that what is contained in this document, it's not true. You know very well, when you speak of interpersonal relations, with who? None of my executive managers, complained about my management or my leadership. No one, even in that institution, lodged a formal grievance, against me related to interpersonal skills. And I still get along very well. And I think it's also very much important for this committee to know that I still, have a good relationship with my colleagues in that institution. But however, advocate, when I received that letter, I walked with Mr. Gumbi and then went to the office, and I said to Mr. Gumbi, can I go through the policy again on probation, on disciplinary matters? And when I looked at that, I realized that, none of those policies which the public protector signed on are complied with. And then I was naive, to also believe that, I can talk to her about it. I called, she never answered. And on my way back to the office, I met her in the corridor with, her security guards. And I actually confronted her and I said to her, why are you doing this to me? She acted surprised that she doesn't know. I said, I've received this letter from the CEO, and I'm dismissed with immediate effect, and I am supposed to leave the building with immediate effect. Why am I treated like a thief? I mean, I didn't steal from anyone, and I believe that the decent thing that we could have done was to actually give me the letters, even if I had to walk next door to Woolworths. Those were my words, because I've got an 8-year-old, but I don't think this is how we should treat people. So then she said, where's the letter? I showed her the letter. And then she said, because of now, I was speaking at the top of my voice, colleagues started to come out of the office and then went to the office of Director Legal Services. And then that's when she inserted, that matter to say that, I can appeal to her within 5 working days. But the question is, when you look into how this matter, unfolded, you can see that, there was a concerted effort, regardless of what I did, without following even the internal policies that they have approved themselves. There was a concerted effort, to get rid of me.
So when you're referring to something she inserted, are you, go to LBV 20, 2352. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you've got it? Yeah. That's still the letter that Mr. Mahlangu addressed to you. Go down, Sebo. Go down to the end. Yeah, 2353. Yeah. When you alluded to something that she inserted there, are you talking about that handwritten note at the bottom?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain how that came about?
It came about after I confronted the public protector, about this matter, as I stated, and then we walked into the office, and then that's when that was written to me. The question, the issue that I have is that if I did not meet with her, is that there was not even going to be an appeal process. Because my view was that, and at the time, Mr. Mahlangu was not delegated. The delegation framework was not signed. It was still a matter that was still discussed in our meeting. So he did not have delegated authority, to deal with this matter. As I stated earlier, that it didn't even have facts as far as, my performance is concerned.
So then you officially stopped working at the Ppsa on the 31st of October, correct?
Yes.
And then after that, you instituted litigation against the PP and the CEO, both in their official and personal capacities regarding the matter, correct?
Correct.
In the North Gauteng High Court?
Correct.
Page 2155, go down. 2155.
Yeah, just both to you, Ms. Basani, Ms. Baloyi, just speak through the chair and just to ask Advocate Mayosi. So as you instruct Sepo, it's important it be on the mic, so it's on record. I think the two of you are continue whispering. So
Thank
you
you,
can
Chair.
all hear where you're pointing here. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chair. Are you that's about page 2155? Go ahead. 2154. So you instituted proceedings against them, both in their personal and official capacities, right?
Correct.
Done. And there you asked the court, the North Gauteng High Court, for the orders that are stated basically from paragraphs 2 to 6 of the notice of motion. You wanted an order declaring her decision to terminate you unconstitutional, directing the decision to terminate you to be set aside, and reinstating you in your position, prohibiting her, the CEO, or anyone else acting under their authority from unlawfully interfering with duly assigned functions, and so on, up to paragraph 6. Is that correct?
Correct.
So in that application, you contended, as you still say you believe here in your affidavit made in this inquiry, that the real reasons for the decision not to confirm your permanent employment were not related to your performance in the time that you were there at the PPSA. And you said, as you say here, that the real reasons emanated from a desire to purge you from the institution. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you still remain of that view?
Yes.
You made an affidavit in that application where this is one of the contentions you made, amongst others, that we will go through now. Is that right?
Yes.
And the PP opposed the application and also filed an extensive affidavit, correct, which was also confirmed by Mr. Mahlangu. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, the PP in her affidavit, she raised a number of preliminary points, or points in limine, as lawyers like to call them. One of the points that she did raise was to challenge the jurisdiction of the North Gauteng High Court to entertain the matter, correct?
Correct.
And then in December 2019, your application was dismissed by the High Court with costs, correct?
Correct.
You then sought leave to appeal directly to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court granted you leave to appeal to it, but only in relation to the High Court's finding on the jurisdiction issue. Is that right?
Correct.
And then the Constitutional Court then remitted, or it sent back the matter. It sent the matter back to the High Court to determine the merits as well as the costs of the hearing in the High Court. Is that right?
Correct.
And the PP in the Constitutional Court was ordered to pay your costs as well, right?
Correct.
What has since transpired in relation to this litigation?
Chairperson, I would like to read a letter that would stipulate where we are as far as this matter is concerned.
Chairperson?
Just before you read that letter, do we have that letter? Advocate Mayosi?
The evidence leaders don't have that letter, but that letter is in the possession of the PP's team, I believe, because it was addressed by Sianaho attorneys to the witness.
Okay.
So perhaps they could assist with actually what the question is about, letter aside, with what the question is about as to where that litigation is.
Okay, let me...
That is information that is within the PP's team.
Okay, let me recognize Advocate Mbofu.
No, Chairperson, Advocate Mayosi should know better. That's not how it works. If her witness, she's leading a witness, if the witness says she's going to read something, she should then appraise both us and yourself, Chairperson, as to what that is and whether it's in front of the committee or us. The fact that it may have emanated from whoever 100 years ago is completely irrelevant. It's a question of whether it's before this particular committee in the usual way.
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you for that. I think that's a proper intervention. Can I get Advocate Mayosi?
Letter aside, is the witness permitted to say what is happening with the litigation without putting up a letter?
No.
Because the witness, that's her evidence.
Are we, before you go there, are we able to get the letter so that everybody else has the letter, and she could even read it later if we all have the letter. It has to be accessible to. No, I'm in the middle of my talk, Advocate Mpofu.
No, fine.
Can we have that letter if she has to read that letter? Otherwise, we've created a practice here that we don't just allow people to surprise each other here, and I would want to stick to that.
Chair, can I say something now?
Yes, Advocate Mpofu.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. No, I think the issue, it looks like Advocate Mkhwebane'S is providing a solution. We're not objecting to the question or the answer. We're just talking about the issue of the letter. So if the question can be answered without reference to the letter, then we can move on.
Okay. Happy with that.
Correct.
Proceed, Advocate Mayosi.
Ms. Baloyi, you heard the interaction. Neither of us, either the evidence leaders or Advocate Mpofu, are in possession of the letter. Can you just apprise the committee as to what the progress of the litigation is without referring to a letter? This is information that should be in your knowledge as to where the litigation is presently.
We are currently in discussion with the Office of the Public Protector. They have proposed, an out-of-court settlement, which I've since given my attorneys of record an instruction to proceed and engage with the Office of the Public Protector. That's where the matter is.
And who initiated those settlement discussions?
It was Public Protector South Africa Office.
Can you tell the committee of the date when those discussions were initiated?
The 22nd of July, 2022.
Thank you. So go to the High Court affidavit, bundle A. Yeah. So turning to the affidavit you made in the High Court, and of course it's on the record that the PP filed an opposing affidavit, and much of what you say in this affidavit is heavily disputed by the PP. But taking for the moment what it is that you say in your affidavit, you say in paragraph 19, go down. Yeah, that's the right one. Go to the affidavit. Yeah. Yeah. In paragraph 19 of this affidavit, you describe in detail the process of investigation. You outline the process that an investigation in the Ppsa follows. And you set out step by step how it goes from being assigned to an investigator, it goes to a chief investigator, from that to the provincial representative and the executive manager, and how it would eventually get up to you as the COO. Do you see that?
Yes.
And how it would ultimately go off to the public protector and be signed off by her after it was quality assured. Do you see that account?
Yes.
And you say ultimately in your paragraph 19 or 20 of that affidavit that the CEO there's no role for the CEO in this process because he's not concerned with the merits of investigations, correct?
Correct.
But you also say in paragraph 21 that sometimes this process wasn't followed and it was short-circuited sometimes, as you put it. Correct?
Correct.
And then of course in paragraph 22 you also make reference to the backlog of cases that you found at the Ppsa when you joined. Can you elaborate a bit for the committee about that? Because this is a theme that has found its way into the evidence of other witnesses. Just the backlog that you found and what systems, in any, you put in place to deal with it when you arrived.
Thank you, Chair. When I arrived, there was a number of cases that were classified as older than 2 years. And remember that I started in February and we're approaching the end of the year, by the 31st of March. And I had to deal with those particular cases. And the first thing that I did was to understand who's responsible for each case and what is the background on these particular cases. And I developed a project plan, which was submitted to all actually, the public protector, the deputy public protector, and the CEO, and it was approved at that level, even on the approach. So what we started doing with the team was to look into those cases and come up with an approach of resolving them. For instance, with regards to the cases that were, in the terrain of the Department of Home Affairs, we looked at them and then we assigned officials and we engaged with Home Affairs to clear that backlog. We also had cases, related to, supply chain management where there were delays or disputes in terms of payment, and we would engage the directors general of various departments to ensure that, the matters were resolved. Some of them were resolved. Some didn't even need, a detailed investigation. We could mediate. For instance, I remember that, some of those issues related to SAA, South African Airways. So we had a lot of those matters that, we resolved within that short space of time. So when you look into all these cases, Chairperson, the will that is normally displayed about the performance in the Office of the Public Protector cannot be attributed to an individual. That is teamwork starting from customer services, all investigators, chief investigators, executive managers. It was a team effort. And I believe that, I have done extremely well in those circumstances because of, in most of the people that, were not even, if I may call it, even interested in dealing with some of the issues. But, we persuaded them, we put in long hours, to deal with those matters. And we all, at the end of the day, after persuading each other that there is a need, because of the nature of work and the people that are affected, that we resolve them. So that's how we successfully dealt with those cases. If there's credit that needs to be given, it should be a team work. It shouldn't even go to an individual per se. But I can assure you that it was not something that could even be done during normal working hours. We put in long hours, and it was a time when load shedding started. We spent our weekends in the office after church on Sunday. So that's how we worked on those particular cases. And in addition to that, if that was really a challenge, if you go through the records of the very same office, I was commended in a meeting that I've done extremely well. The public protector even went on record to tell Mr. Mahlangu that this is not your performance. This is a performance of a COO. So I'm surprised that, all of a sudden, then the issues around performance, came out after, we have dealt with that matter on a matter that is highly publicized. When you look into the performance of that office, that today we conveniently want to forget that it was a team, effort that led to that kind of work. And I still believe, and I can even confidently say that, I find it very surprisingly that, that performance could be attributed to particular individuals. And I can say again, Chairperson, that was the work team, regardless of, the IT system being down in most instances, but the team worked very well, on those cases. Hence, we managed, to achieve those within a short space of time.
And you say in your affidavit, obviously, together with your evidence now, that it was all teamwork. You say that in dealing with that backlog, you managed in the short space of time that you were at the Ppsa to resolve 284, 63% of the backlog cases in the first 2 months when you were there. And since then, after the end of that financial year, you managed to finalize a further 83 cases. This is what you say in paragraph 22. Is that right?
Correct.
And you attribute that strongly now in your evidence to not just you, but to the work of the team, correct?
Correct.
In the next section of your affidavit before the High Court, you then highlight various issues that you identified as being disagreements with the CEO and the public protector. And whilst you say in paragraph 23 that neither one of them ever identified specific instances of misconduct or incapacity on your part that would justify terminating or not confirming your contract, there were nevertheless disagreements with them in the ordinary working environment, which you did not regard as particularly serious. Is that correct?
Correct.
You do nevertheless highlight four instances of disagreements which you say contributed to the fallout in the relationship between you and the CEO. Is that right?
Correct.
Chair, the record in this affidavit has 2 pages that are missing, and so it's going to be difficult to follow this record. We asked the PP's team to provide us with the original affidavit that has the complete affidavit. So I'm just going to ask Tsepo to put that one forward. Yeah, right. So the first instance that you mentioned as being an area, just before we go to the first instance that you mentioned, in paragraph 24, you say that you were seen as a stumbling block at the office and that the CEO, in fact, told you once that he was going to get you. Are you able to recall the context in which that statement was made, that he was going to get you?
The statement was made when I called a meeting of investigators that we dealt with the Mkhwebane'S matter, which is the former, minister in rural development. So what happened was, the team that was investigating that matter, in particular, the senior investigator and the chief investigator could not agree on certain matters. Therefore, I convened that meeting, and in that meeting, asked what needed to go into the Section 79, report. And in that discussion, then it was to integrate the Deloitte report which was submitted by Minister Mkhwebane'S to the office then, which implicated Mr. Mahlangu. And his assertion was that I called that meeting just, to disrespect him or ridicule him or to lay bare, matters of his past, to the team. And I explained to him that if I had bad intentions, why should I call a meeting? And that meeting is meant to deal with a particular case. And I don't think that, you should be worried because of, in essence, you are conflicted because of this matter, you are close to it in terms of the allegations laid out. So that's when, the trouble started.
Right. But the first incident.
Okay, Advocate Mbofu.
Yes, sorry, Chair, my hand has been up. I wanted to just check with Advocate Mayosi how she identifies those missing documents. Excuse me, whether we shouldn't give them page numbers.
They are in bundle E, item 9. They were furnished to us by Nafisa yesterday.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, how do you...
Bundle E, item.
No, I'm saying, are you going to allocate page numbers to them, like 2164B and 2164C or something like that, so that the thing can flow?
Yeah, we can insert that, Advocate Mbofu. I think that's a wise suggestion. Just
yeah, we can call the one you're on 2164B.
Okay. So the item that goes, we have page 7 of the affidavit, right?
Yeah, typed page 7. Yeah.
Yes, typed page 7. It's page 2165.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think the ones we're inserting, which is typed page 8.
So make that 2165B.
B.
All right.
Yes.
And then the other one.
Typed page 9, 2165C.
Okay. 2165C.
And then typed page 10 is there. So we're missing only 2 pages, which is 8 and 9.
Yeah, so type page 10 is therefore with 2166.
66, it's there in the record.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for the intervention. Please proceed, Advocate Mayosi.
Thank you. So we are currently on page 2165. We're about to move over the page to 2165B because Ms. Baloyi is about to tell the committee about what she identifies as the first incident or fallout between her and the CEO in the organization. It starts at 2165, which we have on the record, and it moves on to the new page 2165B. Yeah. So Ms. Baloyi, can you tell the committee about why it is that you refer to the issue of the July dashboard meeting and your handling of backlog of old cases as being one of the issues that arose between you and the CEO?
It was a very interesting day because of, normally the dashboard meetings were chaired by the PP. And we went in there, the meeting was now chaired by the Chief of Staff together with Mr. Mahlangu. And, the introduction was more of an anomaly, in the manner in which, we normally, deal with dashboard cases. It was, like with dashboard meetings, which was dealing with those cases. in the first place, we were just told that, we have not achieved our targets. What is it that you do, when you come to work on a daily basis, and the PP is not ready about, our performance because of we have not ultimately achieved what was said for us, even in the meeting, which you acknowledge because of, reducing that backlog and performance issues were fine, but that meeting started on that note without even interrogating as to why are we at a point we are at. But, it was my leadership that was also questioned in there, which even went to an extent of telling us that, there is lunch that is arranged, and that lunch is arranged for people that are not performing, and we are just there, to eat and waste, money whilst we are not performing. And I requested that we be given an opportunity, to present the reasons why, we could not perform, on some of the cases, and the executive managers must do representations as to where are we at the moment and why are these cases, not concluded on time. But then the meeting there where that, also an allegation that was made was that Ms. Mokgaladi and myself, tried to change the minutes and the dates of, submissions with the Chief of Staff's PA. And that was not true. We met, when we received the minutes of the previous meeting, we realized that, there was a mix-up on cases and also on dates. And when we explained to her, she said, I don't understand. So we met with him and we discussed, which paragraph, because we did it in a tabular format to say that this is a case that is handled by Mr. Koch and it was due when, and this is the progress that we have made thus far. But then in that meeting, we were accused that, we dealt with the minutes just to shift the dates, which was not, was not the truth. So then when we're presenting there is the Chief of Staff, informed us to go to, our offices and attend to matters, and that, we are not serious, and, all sorts of things that, were stated. But however, I presented my case to say that, with some of these cases that we are dealing with, we have gone to all the investigators and spoke to them about the quality of work. And I was not happy. And in some of those meetings, some of the investigators even indicated to say that, COO, you must choose between, whether you want quantity or quality. So we might decide even to ignore certain information because of you are rushing for, a due date. And that's when they explained, their challenges. And the executive manager, AJSD, which was dealing with administrative justice, was Ms. Mkhwebane'S, also presented a case to say that, investigators are not coping with the work. And some of those cases are too difficult because of they are too old, and the information that is required, requires extensive investigations. And then also the executive manager responsible for provincial integration, that is Ms. Tejan, also indicated that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But again, we need to minimize the number of meetings that, are there, because of that's what some of the investigators, in provinces, raised, and even the ones that were in head office. So in that meeting, it was a meeting whereby, we were all presenting the challenges that we had. But that meeting, you know, was chaired or was conducted in a manner that regardless of what we were to say, we're still labeled as being difficult, not wanting to work, you know, and that work is also impossible. But also the challenge that I can say to Chairperson and the committee, I told Mr. Mahlangu that you are talking about something that you do not know, but if you were to talk to these investigators as an accounting officer, you would ultimately understand some of these challenges. But you could see that, you know, there was a concerted effort, you know, to press us or to
Please conclude.
Yes, to say that, you know, the work could be done in that particular period. And then that's when, you know, things happened, you know, things happen differently, you know, that, you know, at the end of the day, we need to deal with those matters. And it was after, you know, some of the issues that I've raised with him, which he said even, you know, in his language was that, you know, I was fundisukuzithoba, you know, and not...
Sorry, who are you talking about now? Who said that in his language?
Mr. Mahlangu said, you know, I was fundisukuzithoba, and I said to him, these are performance issues, these are matters that I think you've got a responsibility as an accounting officer to create an environment for us to perform and actually even understand what you are dealing with and, you know, assist in the process. But for me, it's the allegations that we are making are unfounded. And I find it, you know, very difficult that a person at your level, you know, can make such statements which are unfounded or which could not even be validated by information.
So in your affidavit, though, in paragraph 26 of it, yes, what you point out as having been a major difficulty between you and the CEO that arose from the meeting is that he complained about you altering deadlines that were set by executive managers and your failure to take action against the executive managers. Is that right?
Correct.
And then after the meeting, did you have a discussion with the executive managers at all? And what happened after the meeting?
We discussed it with the executive managers, and that, you know, I was instructed in that meeting that I must take corrective action against, you know, executive managers.
And did you do so?
I did.
Right. So you say in paragraph 27, you sent letters to all the executive managers. Can you go to LBB3, please, Sepo? It's at 2241. Right. So the question is, did you take action against the executive managers? And can you elaborate and tell the committee about that?
After the meeting, after that said meeting, that is the dashboard meeting, we met with executive managers. We looked into the challenges, and these executive managers, you know, acknowledged that there is nothing that you can do because you have been given an instruction to take appropriate action against us. Give us the letters.
Is it they themselves who invited you to give them the letters?
Yes.
Why?
When we're discussing with them, I said, no, I will still wait to make a representation on what we have discussed, because it doesn't help to agree on something that we know we're not going to achieve and we'll have to present a proper report, because what we did was to look into, we went on to prepare a report that, indicated which of those cases were difficult, to deal with within a short space of time, and what are the challenges. And when I was doing that, I sensed in that meeting that they knew something, or they were adamant that, give us the letter so that you don't get into trouble. And I hesitantly did so, because it was even an instruction, from the CEO. And when I assessed what happened, I finally decided that, I will give them the letters and will try to make that report lately. But it was not really a good experience, if I may call it, that, I had to issue letters under those circumstances. But anyway, as Audi letters were a norm, I did it.
Right. So the letters you're speaking about in paragraph 27 is the letter that we're looking at on page 2241. Just go up to see who it's addressed to. And this particular one was addressed to Advocate Fourie, correct?
Yes.
Who was the executive manager for provincial inland investigations, correct?
Yes.
Right. Go to 2243. And you then issued another one to Ms. Motsitsi, who was the executive manager to CSM, right?
Correct.
And the next one at 2245 was to Ms. Tejane, who was the executive manager at PII.
Correct.
And then the next one at 2247. To Ms. Mokhaladi, who was the executive manager of AJSD and GGI. Go to the end of that letter, please, Seppo, to see the date. And these letters you issued to them all on the 6th of August, 2019, after the July dashboard meeting. Is that right?
Correct.
And then in paragraph 20 of your affidavit, you speak of a letter then that you got from the CEO, the newly paginated 2165B, please, Seppo. Paragraph 28. Yeah. You speak of a letter that you then got from the CEO.
Yes.
Right. In which he was telling you what he had resolved about what you needed to do to avoid future non-compliances. And following on from his unhappiness with you about altering of deadlines, he then told you that you would be required to refrain from changing targets without consulting him and the public protector, correct?
Yes, that's what was in the letter.
And is that the letter?
Yes.
All right. So you say in paragraph 29 that you then complied with these requirements. And in fact, on the 10th of October, you sent even more written warnings to the executive managers again, which appear on LBB 5. Tsepo, if you can go to 2250. So you sent more written warnings to the executive managers in October again.
Correct.
Right. So that's the first issue that you state as an example of your disagreements or fallout with the CEO. The second issue that you mentioned in your affidavit on page 215C, in paragraph 31, is the issue about a complaint lodged by a Mr. Wickstrom that had been outstanding for several years after you arrived at the institution. Can you just briefly take the committee through why that became an issue between you and the CEO?
This became an issue because of you were saying to me that, he has sent emails to Mrs. Mokhaladi around the matter of James Wickstrom, and she's not responding to this matter, and I must take appropriation against her. So I said to him, why should I actually take appropriate action against her for not responding to her email? And then I spoke to Mrs. Mokhaladi as to why she's not responding to the emails. And Mrs. Mokhaladi says, it's because of this matter was long, dealt with even before your time and his. And if he asked me correctly, even for that information, I could have responded accordingly. So when I even said to him, Mr. Mahlangu, I think when you want me to deal with the executive manager's non-performance or non-responsiveness, it will be good if you also talk to me about these issues. And I was not happy about how he went about it, but he was adamant that there was something wrong that Mrs. Mokhaladi did without even verifying his facts.
Right. So in your affidavit, you mentioned two other incidents, and I'm not going to. I understand that it's your evidence that the incident of between the provincial representative, Ms. Winnie Manyatela, and Nelisiwe Tejani was also one of the issues that arose between you and the CEO, correct?
Correct.
And the manner in which you dealt with, you handled Ms. Mosana's resignation was also an issue between you and the CEO that arose, correct?
Correct.
In the interest of time, Ms. Baloyi, I'm not going to deal with those issues. They are in your evidence, but I want to move on to the other issues that you say became problematic in the office of the Ppsa between you and the CEO and the PP at the time.
Just before you move, we'll take a tea break for 15 minutes. Thank you, colleagues.
Recording stop. Recording in progress.
Ms. Baloyi. Let's continue with your founding affidavit in the High Court matter, where you identified what you said was unconstitutional behavior on the part of the PP and the CEO from paragraphs 39, 40 and onwards. And you specifically picked out certain investigations as an illustration of this conduct. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you said that in relation to those investigations, by way of illustration, their behavior, both in relation to the reports and the timing of the release of those reports, was you found that behavior conduct problematic. Starting with the Ngwindi investigation, can you just elaborate or for the committee why it is that you found the behavior of the CEO or PP problematic in the conduct of that investigation?
Chair, as I indicated earlier, is Mr. Mahlangu was interested in what needs to go into that report and what doesn't need to go into that report. And the other discomforting matter for me was, he was discussing, pertinent issues with the senior investigator about what needs to be excluded from the report, in the fact that, we will meet, the four of us, myself, the executive manager, chief investigator, and the senior investigator, looked at this case and agree on what needs to go into that report. And then later on, we will realize that, the senior investigator, Mr. Koch, changed that particular report. And then when you ask him questions, you could not even find an answer. And what disturbed me the most was the fact that, Mr. Mahlangu said to me when I reprimanded verbally Mr. Koch that, we can't spend hours on a report. And then he goes back and change what we have agreed upon. And interestingly, Mr. Mahlangu confronted me and said that I must stop ill-treating Koch. And I said, I'm not ill-treating him. I don't even have an intention, because he's doing work that is reflecting on what is expected of me. But what I do not like is how he deals with these matters. We'll guide him, and then he comes back and consult with you and do, deal with this matter differently. And the fact that, he didn't even confront myself, even he confronted the chief investigator and the executive manager, wanting to influence, what the outcome of that report should look like. And which for me, it was interference, and that was obviously conflicted because it was a matter that, was involving him directly. So there was that allegation that, I did it deliberately and wanting to embarrass him. And from that angle, what worried me the most was that he received secondhand information before making those kind of, allegations. And I indicated that I was dealing with that matter, openly. And I have dealt with certain meetings before. If you talk about high-level cases, the Mpumalanga one was a high-level case because it involves the sitting, deputy president of the country, Mr. David Mabuza. These two cases where, executive management ethics, breach, which, had to deal with him. So I find it very difficult that, we needed to be selective. But for me, in terms of principle, was that if a need arises, then I'll have to deal with matters the way I deem fit, so that we ensure that, we come up, with a well-informed report and colleagues can contribute towards that. So there was nothing, amiss about it, but that was, one of the, allegations that he made, around me, that, I'm up to, up to something just to embarrassing. And I raised this matter with the public protector, and her response, she knew what I was talking about, and she told me to do my work and that I needed to finalize this report of Mkhwebane'S because it's related to the permanent appointment of Mr. Mahlangu. And that's when ultimately I had, to understand that, there was a matter of Mr. Mahlangu that was in the bargaining council, and, that has been dealt with in the bargaining council, and it's actually on the court roll. And I, looked into that matter, and that's when I got record, of that particular case, which I felt, the manner in which we were dealing with this particular case, I do not believe it's correct because of they both knew what my concerns were, and I find myself, in that difficult position. And now the allegations to me started to make sense why, he was making those allegations that, I have an agenda, which I did not have because I do not know Minister Mkhwebane'S from a bar of soap. I was trying to do my work. And when I looked into that record, that's when I understood what the matter was all about. For me, Chairperson was about doing my work, and I had no intention of, destroying anyone. But the manner in which, this matter, was handled, I was very much, uncomfortable. And that is one of those that created tension in the office.
And you say in paragraph 55 that you believe that the position you adopted in the Mkhwebane'S investigation caused or contributed to the deterioration of your relationship with the CEO. Is that right?
Correct.
And what was the issue with the draft Deloitte report in that investigation?
The draft Deloitte report, implicated Mr. Mahlangu for wrongdoing, in that report. And he was of the view that, that content should not be part of the Section 7(9).
That was his view?
Yes.
And is that one of the instances where you felt, one, he interfered in the investigation, and two, this was wrong because he was conflicted?
Yes, and he wanted, the copy of the report, from me at the time, and I couldn't give it to him.
All right. So, in addition to the Mkhwebane'S matter, you also mention, you make reference to the Sassa investigation and what do you refer to as the rogue unit investigation as also being problem areas in the organization insofar as the CEO and or the PP. Can you start just briefly explaining to the committee why you found their conduct problematic in relation to Sassa?
With regards to Sassa, I'll speak of the fact that, this is a matter that fell within the ambit, of the executive manager responsible for AJSD. And we looked into the complaint, as a collective. It was myself, Mrs. Mkhaladi, and, the late Madiba around it. And when you look into the complaint, we looked at it to say that, maybe what we needed to do was to, advise Mr. Rodney, who was dealing with that, Matabuche, that was dealing with that matter, that the complaint is around, the 500,000. And when we looked into the approach that, was taken then by Mr. Matabuche, because of Mr. Matabuche reported to Mrs. Mkhaladi. So we tried to, advice on the matter. The first one is the one that is currently on paragraph 60, that when you look into the complaint, focused on the 500,000, and that, given the nature of the manner in which, the investigation has started, is we do not have a mandate as far as, the investigation on those matters are concerned. So what we did with Mrs. Mokgaladi, we discussed it with Mr. Mataboge around it. And interestingly, he was agreeing, but later on, then I was actually called into a meeting where the CEO and the chief of staff were to say that, no, this matter cannot be delegated, to the NPA, because of the NDPP, will not actually deliver the results that I want. This matter should be focusing on that. And anyway, it's not our terrain to discuss on this matter. So I said, no, when we discussed it, it wasn't a matter of preference or whatever, but we were trying to discuss this matter, to assist, Mrs. Mokgaladi. That was one aspect that happened. The second aspect that happened was when we discussed the first one, I think it's on paragraph 59, when we discussed this matter, part of what we came across was, there was information that was not actually included in that particular report. And when this matter, related to the investigation meeting that we had with Mr. Watson, and Mr. Watson, even in his word verbatim, he said even to the PP to say that I'm just a sandwich, that this matter is focusing on the CR17. And we indicated that, and when we look into the first draft of that particular report at an early stage after that meeting, the record of that, Watson, was not there. And he indicated that also that he has donated to many political parties and even individuals. And he does not understand what this matter is all about. So at that stage, those are the issues that we raised. But then later on, we learned that, we are no longer supposed to be in that kind of, the report. And in my discussion was that, when we look into the issues that we raised, there was a perception, for instance, that, we wanted, or we have been coerced by certain individuals, and then were removed from that particular, investigation, which I find it even very difficult, because the issues that we raised, were not personal, but were in the interest of, finalizing a report and looking into the risks as far as, what was to be contained in that report. And this was based on the fact that it was still our responsibility, to deal with those particular matters. So this is one of those issues that I know that there was an unhappiness, and, the chief of staff even said to me that, this report will be dealt in, in this office, and the people will emerge as the powerful woman, in the country after dealing with this particular matter. And I started to have doubts as to whether, our removal from there were issues that, were genuine or in the interest of the organization. And it was a very difficult, kind of a situation, because this was very much, unusual, for me, since, I started working in that particular office.
So when you say you were removed from the investigation, who was removed and by who?
We were told, I was told by the CEO that, myself and Bona, need not to be worried about the sassa matter. And it was following my inquiry when we had a meeting that Mr. Mataboge is not coming and he was supposed to present on his cases. And he said that, you know, he's not supposed to be there because he's dealing with an important matter with the public protector. But I said that it's part of what we are supposed to do. So he said, no, you're no longer part of that particular, you know, investigation. And anyway, the executive manager can deal with his agenda item.
Right. One of the issues that you raise as being problematic to you in the Bosasa and Rogue Unit investigations, you say in paragraph 63 that the PP prioritized both reports. Now, surely you cannot fault the PP for wanting to expedite the investigations and the reports as soon as possible. Why did you find this problematic?
Chairperson, finalizing, I think that was good practice. You know, it was good for the public protector to finalize, you know, reports timeously as required by by legislation on this type of cases. But my challenge, or our challenge, you know, as a team, although in that affidavit I spoke for myself, was how the process, you know, that led to the finalization of that particular report was. So to complete a report on time, it's good because then the complainants, you know, get relief, and it's also good practice. But for me, it was the manner in which, you know, some of the issues or some of the content then that we've been raising, you know, was, or some of the advices that we even gave, you know, were not actually considered. So I think for me, the problem is not about finalizing the process, but for me, it's finalizing, you know, a report and without considering, you know, certain information, or actually without actually closing the gaps or weighing the risks, if I may call it that way, so that at the end of the day, that report is finalized, you know, timeously.
Are you saying that because they were finalized so quickly, that had an impact on the quality produced?
Correct.
And then in paragraph 64, you set out a WhatsApp communication which you say you received from the PP on the 26th of May. This, where she is making reference to sabotage from the PG camp, as she put it in the text. Was this in relation to the Rogue Unit investigation?
Correct.
What did you understand this WhatsApp communication to be saying to you? And why was it problematic?
For me, it also, there was an email that first came out, you know, to from the chief of staff in one of the emails that, you know, Minister Pravin was unruly, number one, and I was not even aware of the sabotage that was there. And, you know, the challenge with me is why, because of I was excluded in some of the processes, why actually do that? But what worried me the most, Chairperson, was that last statement. That, you know, playing chess. And my understanding and my belief was that, you know, whatever the outcome of an investigation should be based on fact, on the information that we have received. But I find that statement worrying, because if you are really doing a proper investigation, why play, you know, chess? And my interpretation was that, you know, it was a political game that is being played.
And then in paragraph 66, you refer to another WhatsApp communication you received from her relating to a meeting with Mr. Ramaphosa on the 30th of May. where she was instructing you that you would form part of the team. And she'll give you a copy to read and shred thereafter. What was this about, and why is this problematic for you?
The first challenge that, one had was the mere fact that, with some investigations, one was involved, one were not, at some stage were not involved. And now I need to go to Mahambandlovu, and deliver, the Section 79. And now I'm given a hard copy, which is unusual. One would be given a soft copy. And I can only assume that probably the soft copy, was problematic in terms of, probably how it has been structured. But to shred it was the worst, because of in that office, we never shredded most of the reports that we had, especially with the comments. I used to file them, on notes so that I can go back to my notes and understand, the rationale. So for it to be shredded, it was an anomaly. But when you look into the other reports that we have dealt with, following and, involving cabinet members, whenever, it's a draft report or whatever, there was never such an instruction to shred it, because of, for me, it was a Section 79 and it never had, even attachments or anything. I looked at it as normal, kind of a report. And when I looked at this instruction, it was, I was surprised, and it was really unusual.
You also then raise as one of the problematic investigations for you, the McBride investigation. Can you just briefly highlight for the committee what you thought disturbed you about either the PP or the CEO in that investigation?
When we dealt with the McBride issue, the complaint was around an appointment of a deputy director, which was in provincial administration office. So when we received, the draft reports with the executive manager, Tejan, the tone of that particular firstly, it was a tone of that particular investigation. And, we started discussing that with the provincial head, that is Ms. Manyatela, that, this report actually has got two complaints. Can you give us, the copy of the other complaint? Who's the complaint? Because when you read the complaint is not talking about procurement. It's only talking about, the appointment of a deputy director. Then instead of her answering that particular question, she went to the CEO that Ms. Tejan and myself are questioning, her investigative skills, which I said, no, it's not about that, but it's about one understanding, what this matter is all about. So then when we're dealing with this particular investigation, I said, but why would you focus on one of those that are actually part of the investigations that are normal? Then you're saying, no, Mr. McBride is likely to be nominated to be a deputy public protector, therefore we need to eliminate him from the system. Then I asked the question, we are talking about somebody at senior level. How would he have known such procurement and such appointments and laying this at his door without even considering that the issues of procurement, the CFO could be involved, or the manager supply chain could have been involved. Same thing as the appointment. But we couldn't find anything specifically that linked him as the person, but the investigation was, talking to Mr. McBride. And the investigator himself, later on, instead, when we raised issues later, which was another anomaly, he sent the report directly to the public protector without the executive manager and myself, having looked at it. So that was another aspect. And for me, it's the fact that the explanation that we got from the officials is that, you know, we have worked with McBride, we know that kind of an environment. And I said that everybody else has got issues, but let's focus on the issue at hand. So for me and the executive manager, it was, this thing is not only, it was no longer about the investigation, but it was about something else. So that was also problematic, you know, for us, you know, in the office.
And finally, in your affidavit, you mentioned the Ppsa investigation as being another example of the CEO where he improperly sought to interfere in the conduct of an investigation. Can you just elaborate for the committee how that was so in your view?
Mr. Mahlangu indicated that, you know, there is a supplier that is not being paid, and that, you know, Ppsa is taking its time to can do that. And then he sent me a message to understand that who's dealing with Prodigy, and he has been trying to get hold of Mr. Jan, could not get hold of him, get hold of her, I'm sorry. And then I had to talk to Mr. Jan about it, that, you know, she must intervene with regards to the payment. And it was, I think, 2 weeks that we have met with the board of Ppsa, and Mrs. Kanyisila, I forgot her name now. I don't know why I forgot it. So we agreed in that meeting that, you know, whenever we're looking for information on the previous or investigations, we must talk to, you know, the board and establish what is happening. So he was saying that, no, we need to pay this complainant. And when we were asking, then Mr. Jan was asking questions, and he says that in that WhatsApp to say that I asked Nelly to intervene with regards to the payment, and now the complainant feels she's being investigated in terms of you know, being assisted. Then I went to him to say that, but we cannot ultimately deal with this request because this office investigated that matter, and we are the ones that came up with the, you know, those recommendations that, you know, the appointment was irregular and therefore the matter is before the court. And then he said to me, you don't know whom you're dealing with. You're dealing with powerful politicians here, and you must resolve this matter as soon as possible. I said, I cannot do that because of then what do I do, you know, and what do we say to Ppsa because of the matter is before the court and we could not do that. So it was one of those worrying factors that Mr. Mahlangu could not understand even where the case is. He would make instructions on matters that he did not even have a clue of what is happening. So those were some of the issues that, you know, actually troubled me amongst others. I could go on and talk about other investigations.
Thank you, Ms. Baloyi. Can we go to her affidavit for the inquiry, bundle D, I think it is. So in the affidavit that you've made for the inquiry, you've obviously associated yourself with the affidavit you made in the High Court, which we've substantially just gone through now. But you also then, in this affidavit, elaborate on other aspects, one of which is this issue, which is the culture of fear at the Ppsa. And in paragraph 8 of your affidavit, you then reiterate that when you were the COO, you were responsible for investigations, and you set out the reporting lines that you had 4 executive managers reporting to you, and then you reported to the PP for investigations, to the CEO for administrative issues, and to the DPP, whom you've said was then Advocate Kevin Malunga for cases older than 2 years. You've also alluded to what you say, you've also alluded in your evidence already to what you say in paragraph 9, which is the backlog that you found and what you did to deal with it in the time that you were there. But in paragraph 10, you then say that the PP was obsessed with eradicating the backlog. Now, before we talk about this, I want to put this proposition with you. It would seem to me, as an ordinary individual in relation to the Ppsa, that it's quite laudable for the executive authority to want to eradicate a backlog. Would you not agree?
I agree, as I stated earlier.
Yes. So what was problematic then about the PP wanting to get rid of this backlog? What was the problem in relation to this?
The problem was what I said earlier, that, when you look into this kind of a backlog and you look even into the area and the amount of work that needed to go into those investigations, is, we were focused mainly on that than nothing else, but actually even pushing the numbers, at the expense of content.
Okay, we'll get to that because you deal with quality later on in your affidavit. But in this particular paragraph, you say that in monitoring the progress of the backlog, the PP imposed her own impossible and unreasonable short-term targets. Now, my question is, were the targets not set by the executive managers and their investigators?
No. Is that I'll receive an instruction as to which this report needs to be, released by when, and then we'll go back to the executive managers as to what, what needs to be released by the end of the month. For instance, I will tell you, I received an instruction on the 26th of March that, the FSB report must be released by the 28th of March. That was almost 2 days. And there was no way that, that report could be finalized in those 2 days. So for me, that was one kind of a challenge. But personally, as I stated earlier, it's actually good that we finalize, the reports on time, eradicating the backlog. But when you look at the unreasonable and impossible short-term targets that were given even to specific, chief investigators and executive managers, for me, it was something that, was worrisome at the end of the day.
What made these targets unreasonable? Can you be a little bit specific? The targets that you say the PP required, what made them unreasonable?
I've mentioned, the issue around the amount of work that needed to go in there vis-a-vis the date that we were given, to finish that. I'll actually even give you a second example. There was a report that we're supposed to, deal with the Tshwane municipality on appointments, and the period that we have been given that we needed to finalize it quickly was very much unreasonable. But what we did with that particular report, I had to put up a team that we had to deal with within that particular, period. But at the end of the day, what happened was everybody else had to leave doing and focusing on helping, the senior, the chief investigator involved in that report so that it's completed on time. And I felt that, that is not the right way of working, but I think the environment allowed for people to agree to targets. Because of whenever an instruction comes, it was very clear that, if you don't get that done, then there's going to be punitive measures.
Right. And you say later on in the same paragraph that during dashboard meetings, people were forced to commit to targets which they knew that were impossible to achieve. Now, my question is, surely executive managers could disagree with the PP?
You mean on targets? There was no room for that.
Can you elaborate?
you know, even if, as I stated, that, you know, people will have to commit for, you know, for all those particular targets because of, they were scared because of most of the time, as I said, that, you know, instructions were accompanied by a statement, you know, of, you know, an Audi or a threat of not, if you are not going to deal with those particular matters. So that was not an easy, you know, kind of a meeting. And people had to commit to those kind of targets. As I said, that we will go out when we look at it, that, you know, there's an amount of work that needed to be done. But unfortunately, you know, we had to live with that norm of an Audi environment.
So let me take you to paragraph 12 of your affidavit, where you describe, in your view, the PP's leadership style, and you say she was authoritarian. She must be bowed down to. Quite literally, her style of leadership was characterized by inflexibility. Now, Ms. Baloyi, is that not a bit of an exaggeration? Can you just elaborate on this authoritarian and bowing down to leadership style and how she must be addressed as madam and all of that? Can you elaborate for the committee, please?
Yeah, I think that has been my experience, you know, having been in that particular, you know, office. For instance, I have worked with various MECs and ministers, but, you know, when the public protector walks from an office to the boardroom, you know, we had to rise, and which I find it, you know, an anomaly that, you know, it's not a person that walks in as an executive authority, which most of the MECs and ministers that I've worked with, you know, do not actually, you know, do that. And I think I just felt that when you are at that particular level, you know, you need to deal with matters, you know, in a manner that you understand your team, you understand your environment. I'll cite an example.
Sorry, sorry to disturb you. You said you had to rise. You mean if she walked into a room and you were already in the room, you had to rise? Is that what you mean?
Yes, we had to rise. We had to rise.
Okay. And you interpreted this as what?
I mean, for me, it's, I interpreted it as, you know, a sign of power and leadership that needed to be done. I mean, it's not somebody that is walking maybe some few meters, but it's just few steps. You just open a door and come into that boardroom. It's just a step, 2 or 3 steps, but we'll just have to rise. And I find it, you know, out of the ordinary. And when I ask colleagues why are we doing that, and they say that this is how it needs to be done.
So you say then she fostered, you're still on paragraph 12, she fostered a culture of mistrust and insecurity in the organization, and you make reference to a WhatsApp text that you say she sent you, warning you not to trust Ms. Mokhaladi. And is this the text you're talking about?
Yes, that is the text that I spoke about.
Are you able to recall what circumstances what led to this WhatsApp text message?
If you look at the date, it was when I've just started, you know, in that office. And it was a day after, you know, Mr. Tebele and Ms. Mokhaladi were in my office for a long time, you know, dealing with this particular, you know, for a period that they've been in a meeting and appraising me on certain matters. And she was, I can't remember, but I was surprised that, you know, she could send me that message. But my assumption was it was because of that, because I've just started and I didn't know the individuals, personally.
Right. So can you also just elaborate for the committee on what you mean by what you say in paragraph 13, which is the PP would not or couldn't allow professionals employed in the Ppsa space they required to do their jobs and to conduct investigations. These are quite serious claims to make, but of course you were the CEO when you were there. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, I've noted your hand, Advocate Mpofu.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair, I thought I was muted.
Thank you. Please respond, Ms. Baloyi.
At the time when we're dealing with this, backlog and other, cases, then there was a proposal that, people should be moved around. Other people would not be dealing with this kind of an investigations. Now they have to go to new areas. On the other hand, we were also, focusing on, a new organizational structure that, was supposed to be fit for purpose. So I find it very difficult as to what is it that, that needed to be done. And in that particular process, outside one example, one, in senior investigator was in a state that, she had to cry in the corridors because now she was being moved to another area. And the other reasons for, the reasons that when we engage with Mr. Mahlangu, it was about, gossips that ultimately led to making decisions that were not in the interest of the work that we were doing. And, at the end of the day, you'll find that, there were levels of mistrust amongst colleagues because of, somebody else now had to deal with a matter that somebody else, have not been done. So, when these decisions were taken, were excluded from the process, and with all executive managers, we had to meet with Mr. Mahlangu to say that in the middle of these investigations, you still expect us to perform. However, you want us to move people around. We are also supposed to deal with structural matters. And you are creating a problem for all of us because of then we are sitting with, employees that are not happy. There's tension in the office as to what informs, those kind of outcomes. So in most instances, what you'll get from him was, no, we have just observed so-and-so it's, it's not going to do this report quite well, or so-and-so cannot be trusted. But I said, this is a professional environment. As a COO, as a program manager, when you move someone and they were doing their work, we need to explain this thing. I remember that there was a lady that even went to the public protector's office, Princess, and she came out of there in a state because she was one of those that were supposed to be, moved. She was crying in the corridors, hysterical. And Mr. Mahlangu wrote to, the chief investigator in that unit to say that she must tell Princess to behave, instead of causing drama. And I said, this was not about drama. This is about, work. So at some stage, that's what I'm saying, that, when somebody comes to your office and cry to say, I've never done this work before and I cannot be moved and I need to be, assisted in terms of looking into how I go about this work. I require training. On the other hand, this work of dealing with these cases, it's massive and there are tight deadlines. And when you ask me to go and start something new, I will fail. So this was the kind of an environment that, decisions were taken in a manner that I believed that it was not in the interest of the organization, because you can't just give somebody who is not fit to do or to actually execute certain responsibilities, and start with, a case that has got clear deadlines. So for me, it was the lack of appreciation of professionalism and looking into what are the strengths and weaknesses of this team, how we can help them, and if we do that, what are the risks, of not doing that. So for me, it was about moving people, and we don't care, they're gonna start and do that work. And I felt that, that environment, it was not right in terms of taking decisions that affect people, because these are the people that are the engine of the core mandate of that particular office.
Okay. Before I recognize Advocate Mbofo.
Sorry. No, sorry, it's an old hand, Chairperson.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Proceed, Advocate Myers.
Thank you, Chair. So staying with paragraph 13 at the end, the last sentence, you say that the PP involved herself in operational matters of the office to the detriment of reporting structures and management relationships, and this created immense confusion and tension. Can you elaborate on that, please, and be more specific?
When I look at when I wrote that paragraph was, there are certain matters that I am of the view that if we are talking about a public protector that is operating at executive authority level, is that, she would be involved on reports when they are concluded and it's actually work that, has been sanctioned by those that have got a responsibility to do so. But in some instances, we'll be busy with reports and then she'll be giving other instructions on the senior investigators on what you need to do. And you would have seen a report before, and when you ask the senior investigator, they'll tell, no, the PP wants it in this particular manner. And at times you wouldn't know whether, what is it that we need to do when we don't agree. And I felt that, it was an executive authority that was operating, at a very low level, and which was detriment to the reporting structures. For instance, when, there are matters that are related to legal services, I'll give you a classical example. It's about a report that is, actually in my area, which is investigation, but, legal services, is currently, with corporate services. Therefore, in terms of, governance, you wouldn't even know where do you feature in, because certain decisions have been taken that affect, even your budget. So it was a very difficult, kind of an environment, to operate, because at times you wouldn't even know how to deal with a matter that you have allocated to an investigator, and then later on you are told, no, take it, take that work from that particular investigator and give it to somebody else. And the question that comes, naturally to someone is that, what is wrong in me handling this particular environment? And most of the time, the reasons that were provided, it was not actually, related to competences, but it was related to something which you wouldn't even communicate to the individuals concerned and still feel like you are providing leadership, or you would ultimately even, be a clown yourself by telling somebody that somebody who does not even work with you does not trust you. So it was that kind of an environment that, in some instances, or in most instances, created, tension amongst, team members.
So you say in paragraph 14 that you talk about the pressure on you and other executives to take disciplinary measures against staff, and that on many occasions you would refuse to take those steps against staff members who reported to you. Can you just explain and elaborate for the committee why it is that you wouldn't take that approach when instructed to take such steps against people who reported to you?
In terms of any manager, when you give somebody the instruction, you must know that it's a reasonable instruction, or it's something that it's within the law, and you also need to explain yourself why you give that instructions, what the expected outputs are, and also engage with them to find out what kind of support do they need. And when they've got challenges after that particular process, you intervene and establish, the causes of delays or the causes of performance. You do not actually give an instruction and a timeline and with threats that, for instance, we are going to be managed. I'll give you an example. We had an investigator that was promoted by the name of Funzo. She was just admitted as an advocate, and given, more responsibilities, she could not cope. But all the time when we're dealing with cases, that were managed by Funzo, is that why is Funzo not actually, punished, or, why she's not disciplined, she's not performing. But it's somebody that we have recently promoted. And as an employer, I felt that, you've got a responsibility to nurture that talent, to guide and develop. But you cannot just promote someone and later on, wanting to discipline them when they cannot achieve it. And I felt that is very much unfair. And in my view is, you cannot manage something that you do not even give an opportunity to understand its context. And it was my view that I need to listen to my colleagues, understand their challenges, and, because of the environment in which you are working in. Much as I appreciate that we needed to meet our targets, but you cannot ignore, some of the challenges that they face as a manager and not try to resolve them or help them throughout the particular process. So for me, it was an environment that you do it on this day. If not, actually, you are going to get an Audi or you have to be disciplined.
Thank you. So can I just deal with one last issue before we break for lunch? And then after lunch, I won't be long. I think I'll be about 20 minutes or so. Thank you. So let's go to paragraph 15. You talk about a meeting. She called you in the PP into her office with Mr. Mahlangu and the late Mr. Nyembe, who was her chief of staff. Do you see that?
Yes.
Why can you recall when that meeting was? What had happened? What had caused that meeting to be called?
I can't recall an incident, but it was, I received a call from Mr. Mahlangu that I need to come to the PP's boardroom. And I went into that particular, boardroom. And when I get in there, Mr. Mahlangu said to me, he used the phrase that if you can't feed your stomach, we'll feed it. And we feed it for you, then it means that we don't need you. And I say, what does that mean? Then they were saying to me that, I'm not actually performing. And again, is the fact that, I've been given, an instruction a long time ago to deal with the non-performance issues around Mrs. Mokgaladi. And because of that, it's something that, they are worried about, and that now I've befriended all the executive managers. That's why they are not actually performing. And when they mentioned that, honestly, I recalled that it looks like, there is something wrong with Mrs. Mokgaladi that I do not know, in terms of that particular issue, because of the performance was across, the organization, but the name that was mentioned in particular was that of Mrs. Mokgaladi. And, although the performance on the cases older than 2 years, were transversal within an organization.
And what was your response?
I responded to say that, but I need to, I've noted, what they've said. But again, I believe that, you know, the reasons that have been, you know, provided to me in terms of most of the issues related to not meeting those deadlines, you know, they were sound, but I committed that, you know, I'll take corrective action. And I find that meeting, you know, awkward because immediately after they said that, they said, no, the meeting is adjourned. It didn't even last for 5 minutes.
All right. And then in paragraph 16, you talk about, you say you met with the executives to establish their challenges, and they explained a number of issues to you, including the targets, the decision-making, the interference in operational matters, you say in paragraph 16. Did you communicate with the PP regarding these constraints and these challenges expressed to you by the executive managers?
Yes, even when you look into those minutes, you know, of July 31st, some of these issues might not have been said in, I mean, or expressed in my, in the same manner in my affidavit, but the challenges that, you know, they had, you know, was around those particular issues. For instance, when we looked into, you know, when looking into operational matters, I remember that, you know, that's what, you know, ultimately led to the issues around the Gauteng office. You know, that there was a disagreement between Ms. Manyatela, you know, the PR manager, and an admin officer in that office. With this admin officer, you know, who has lost the brother-in-law in Polokwane and requested to travel, you know, before Friday. And I remember, if I recall, probably could have been the weekend of the 15th or the 31st. And Ms. Tejani came to me that, you know, there's this issue that is at hand, that Ms. Manyatela is refusing to give this admin officer, you know, leave. And I asked as to what is this person doing? Is it an investigation? Does she have timelines and whatever? And surprisingly, before we dealt with that issue, Mr. Mahlangu confronted me that, you know, this is a problematic employee and she does not respect Ms. Manyatela, and she's not deserving leave. She can leave on Friday. But I said to them, you keep an admin officer in the office because she's got a challenge with a provincial manager, and you expect this person to be fully functional when she's got bereavement. Really, just leave this person to go. And to my surprise, you know, because of this particular issue, you know, that created challenges in that particular office, I was excluded, you know, from a meeting that was supposed to go there and, you know, address those issues because of, I instructed Ms. Tejan that, you know what, we are turning this institution into a mental health, you know, into a mental health institution. That person won't be productive. What they need to do is to ask her what is required of her before she leaves, and then she can leave. Whether there are other issues that, you know, involved her, you know, it doesn't actually, it doesn't matter, but she must complete what she's supposed to do, and she be granted leave and go and bury her loved one, and then we're going to deal with those issues. So I just felt that that was very much unreasonable and unfair, because I told them, you'll keep her here, but she won't be functional. But the other aspect was, I used to find it very difficult that issues of Gauteng, out of all the provinces that Mr. Jani had, you know, had to go to the CEO. And in most instances, you wouldn't even get both sides of the story. You'll side with Ms. Manyatela and act on what, or on that particular matter.
Chair, this may be a convenient time.
No, I'll give you the extra 15 minutes.
Thank you.
To conclude.
And so, moving on in your affidavit, you talk about you talk about your own particular incident where your daughter was ill and you needed to take leave to attend to her. And you
Yes.
say in paragraph 17 that the CEO refused to allow you to take leave. Is that right?
Correct.
And can you just explain to the committee what the context of that communication was?
The communication that, yes, on the 2nd of September, there were reports that I was supposed to submit to the public protector, and the night before, my daughter, who was 8 years then, was very sick. And I informed the PP's office and the CEO that I would not be able to come to work earlier because I need to take my daughter to the PID. And I had reports that I worked on, at home. So I started in the office and I dropped those reports very early in the morning. I think around 7:45 I was in the office. Then I left before 10. And then I got a message from the PP asking me, where are those reports? That's when I responded to say that, I have some of the reports I've left in the office and I have to review them, and stating that, my daughter, I've taken her to a PID and she's diagnosed with bronchopneumonia and I'm finalizing logistics. And then she said, all the best, she's healed. I said, thanks, PP. Then 2 minutes later, then I get a message that says, I'll be taking action against CEO for your failure to meet deadlines. We need to lead by example and be accountable. If you submitted all these on time, such emergency would not portray one as insensitive. I just said to myself, really? Now I've got competing kind of, challenges with me, being a mother to an 8-year-old who's struggling to breathe and is on, she had to be admitted. And now I need to manage the reports and I need to have the right frame of mind. And then I had to give it. And I think when you look into the following picture, I had to send proof that my daughter is it's actually admitted in hospital. It's true. I had to send photos. But I just said to myself, I had to live with it. And it was not happening to me. I remember even when I was there, Ms. Mokhaladi also had tight deadlines. Her niece was sick and the doctors informed them that, she was on her last, days, of her life. Ms. Mokhaladi drove to Polokwane. She met a cousin. She wanted to brief me. I said, no, communicate directly with the PP so that, she understands what you are actually did. The very same message, was like, showing some form of empathy, but there's always a but, that she said that, showed some empathy and gave Ms. Mokhaladi that I needed those reports by 1600 hours on the same day. And I said to myself, really? Somebody's driving from Polokwane. Much as we understand there's work that needs to be done, but for me it was such an environment whereby you don't know whether that empathy is genuine and which is normally accompanied by a statement, a punitive measure. So it is one thing. I mean, for me, chairperson, a mother. In our culture, if they say that somebody is in hospital, very sick, or somebody has got bereavement, you even, as a mother, put yourself in the position of leadership to say that I have to communicate whatever that I need, from that particular person in a sensitive manner. And also the timing is very much important. But this is not what we faced, but we soldiered on. And this is an indication that, I'm talking about, a culture of That was
Thank you, Ms. Baloyi. Thank you, Ms. Baloyi. We got that. Advocate Mayosi.
So Ms. Baloyi, charge 4, as you know, of the motion, it talks about harassment, victimization, intimidation by either the public protector or the former CEO. The question I have for you is, where is the harassment, victimization, and intimidation in the story that you've come to tell this inquiry?
The number of audits that I have received, the number of, unfounded allegations that, I have been made against me, really, for me, that was victimization and intimidation. I mean, you work and you are promised that, regardless of the circumstances, you're going to get, an audit. For me, that is victimization.
And finally, nothing is all bad. Can you point out to any positive aspects of your experience in working at the Ppsa for the 8-9 months that you did?
Yes, Chairperson, it's not all bad. I think it was a very good environment. People were passionate about their jobs, professionals. I had good relationships with colleagues, and they are the best of people that, if given an opportunity, one day, God permitting, maybe I can go and work with them. I worked with a good team. I went into that environment. They inducted me, they supported me, we engaged very well. Whenever that, we had differences, would iron them out and be able, to do things in the interest of the organization. I think this is a team that, under those circumstances, as I alluded to earlier, managed the backlog, it received. So I've learned a lot, from that particular team, that is there. But unfortunately, we find ourselves with that kind of leadership. But really, I admired the team, and I'll continue to admire them. They love their work, and I think that's it. I wouldn't. It was not all bad. There are things that are good about that environment. I should be honest about it.
Chair, I have no other questions for this witness, Chair.
I've given you 15 more minutes. Thank you. Are you done?
I wouldn't mind being, I went through the last bits in a bit of a rush.
Just finish, it's fine.
Before the lunch break.
Yes. How much more time do you need?
Ask me to.
How much more time do you need?
No, Chair, I have no questions for the witness.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll deal with them differently if they come up.
Okay. Thank you. We'll take a lunch break and be back at 2. Thank you. We pause.
Recording stopped.